Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Ask Amy. I have a question today about memories, and it's a really good one. It's an interesting question, a little bit different than what we sometimes get, but I love it because I think questions like this help us just get curious about how things work, and we get to go a little deeper in this understanding and see more without necessarily having a problem that needs to be solved, or without looking for how can I do this differently or have this show up differently. It's an opportunity to just see more about how our experience works and what our experience really is. So I'll read the question from Cheryl. Cheryl asks, are memories just thoughts? They seem more tangible than that. Random memories crop up, and I've tried saying to myself that it's just another thought, but I find that the emotion associated takes hold really quickly and doesn't shake so easily. Both good and bad memories affect me the same way. So our memories, these vivid, like she says, good or bad, but they have this vivid emotion sometimes attached to them. Not always, sometimes. And they're personal, it's something that happened, and it's really easy for our minds to tell a lot of stories about memories, and especially if they're older memories and they're like coming back, well, why did I think of that? People ask, like, why does this keep popping in my head? And what does this mean? It's an area where it's really easy for our mind to kind of go to town on that and try to figure it all out. So basically, Cheryl, yes, memories are thoughts. They're no different than anything else. And the thing about our thoughts, so we have this power of thought that's constantly moving through us, bringing experience to life all the time, right? And what it brings, we sometimes look at and we can call those like little thoughts. It's the content, it's the story, it's the what part of it, what's it talking about? Is it a memory of this or a memory of that? Or is it thinking about the future? Or is it this or that? We can get really in the content. And that's where it's easy to sort of look and focus, because again, that's just what we're attuned to. We're listening to the stories and the little thoughts and the content of what our mind is saying. So there's so much thoughts just showing up through us all the time. We're just, the minute we're born to the minute we die, we're just bombarded with it, right? And it's a really interesting question to kind of look at, well, why is some of it feel so, like Cheryl says, so tangible and real? Why is some of it so emotional or sticky or vivid? And others of it are like, who cares, and others of it, yet we're not even consciously, it's so who cares that we don't even know what's going on. So we can look at, a memory, a really vivid emotional memory at one end of the spectrum, or for some people, it's a really vivid fear that brings up all this emotion and has all this stuff going on, at that end of the spectrum. Then there's thoughts like, it just runs the gamut, but like maybe somewhere in the middle, there's thoughts like, what time is it? What's for lunch? Don't really care, right? Like it's stuff that just kind of passes through pretty easily, no big deal. Then there's all this thinking that's taking place all the time. Look at the world around us. We're seeing things. There's so much vivid sensory information showing up, kind of being processed. Most of that, a huge majority of that, just for us to be able to get through our day, is just filtered right out. So we have no reaction to that. Now, what comes up as emotional and grabs our attention and what doesn't is an interesting question, and there's lots that goes into that. Sometimes our mood, if you're in a bad mood, you're more likely to see and notice and focus on stuff that kind of matches your mood. If you're in a great mood, maybe you're more likely to kind of filter things out and just notice things that keep you in your nice mood. There's our past. There's just like what's coming up for us, like what's sticky and sensitive, and maybe stuff that we haven't, that doesn't really sit well with us, maybe something that we're trying to resist or not feel. So when I talk with people who have a lot of anxiety, for example, they're really afraid of something being off, feeling off in their body. Someone who has a lot of anxiety is going to feel a skipped heartbeat or a quick heartbeat or something in a very different way than someone who doesn't have a lot of anxiety. It's the exact same thing. Same thing's happening, but for them, that thought, oh, my heart's beating kind of fast, will be a totally different experience than for someone else. So all of this is not about memories and is it thought, it's all thought. But what we're kind of looking at here is the fact that all thought essentially is the same. In me, you, every one of us, we experience that thought brought to life in a different way in every single moment of life. But it is all the same stuff. The energy that brings you a fearful thought that's on your mind for weeks is the exact same energy. It's made of the exact same stuff as a thought about time to let the dog out. Who cares? Or processing and thinking really about all this stuff around us that we're not even aware that we're even thinking of, like the most neutral stuff in the world. So it's all the same at its core. It's just that within each one of us, it's kind of brought to life and shows up in a different way. And then our mind comes in and tells different stories about it, right? It brings it to life even further sometimes. So that, I think, is a really, I don't know, that does something for me to kind of see that, like, wow, it's really all the same. Thought is all the same. I work with a lot of people with habits and they talk about cravings and urges and all of this. And it's so easy to want to put those in their own bucket. Oh, well, when I have a craving for a drink or when I have an urge to overeat or whatever it is, like that just feels like its own little creature. It's not. That's thought too. It's just like a memory. It's just like a craving. It's just like an urge. It's just like a thought about what time is it? Time to let the dog out. It's all essentially the same. It's just brought to life and infused with our own emotion and more thinking and all of this kind of stuff. So it comes to life within us in a different way and within you in a different way, moment to moment to moment. So even within one person, it's not consistent. So the show of it is different, but the essence of it is the same. And that's really big to see because it kind of helps us see that how we're experiencing stuff is just how we're experiencing it in that moment. It's simply how it's being broadcast to us and maybe the stories that our mind is telling about it in that moment. It's not that it is something special or that it is different or that it is inherently meaningful in some way. So, you can have memories about certain things that come up over and over again. And it's really easy for a person to say, wow, why is this here? And what does this mean? And is this thing unresolved? Or do I need to, did I make a mistake? Should I be filled with regret about this thing? Or our mind just wants to make sense of what's showing up. But what we see when we see that it's all thought and it's all inherently the same is that there's nothing necessarily to make sense of. Maybe there'll be some information. If you get quiet and just let that be there, if there's something to know about some thought, I don't know, I guess you'll know it. But we certainly don't have to dig for it and analyze it and try to figure stuff out. Again, we don't have to do that. It's all the same. It's all thought brought to life. And we're just getting it how we're getting it. And furthermore, however it's showing up for us is very, very temporary. So by the time we dig in and analyze it and try to figure it out and tell stories about it, it's gone. It wants to be gone. We can hold it in place and try to analyze it to death, but it wants to just move on and be replaced by new thought. So see, Cheryl, like what this does for you. Because a lot of times when things are recurring or emotional, especially like in an uncomfortable way, we're resisting it in some way. We're telling stories about it. We've given it all this meaning that it doesn't necessarily have on its own. It doesn't have on its own. So seeing that sometimes helps us back off of it a little bit. I know I still have recurring dreams. I've talked about this a little bit about someone from my past, and it would be an easy thing. They're very emotional dreams that I have, I don't know, probably several times a month. For years, this person hasn't been in my life in years and years and years, decades. And I can see that tendency of my mind to like, why? What's going on? What needs to be done? You know, what do I need to do with this? And all of that stuff. And it's like, when I just let that get kind of quiet and see, wow, it's just thought being brought to life. I don't know what to do with it. So there's nothing to do with it. If something comes to mind that needs to be done with it, then I'll do it. It really is that simple. I know psychology can look like this big, mysterious, complex thing. It's really not that complex. It's kind of simple when we just let things be, oh, that's what's being brought to life, and then it changes, and then it moves, and then we get something else. And then in that peaceful place, again, if there's something to do, you'll know. And if you don't know, then there's nothing to do. So sit with that, you know, like try that on, take that into your life, everyone, kind of considering the fact that like all of our thoughts are essentially the same and they all operate in the same way. And we just, for whatever reason, bring more attention and focus and emotion to some than others, but it's a revolving, moving, recycling, constantly recycling kind of process. And see what that does. I don't know. I think it's really fascinating, and I think it brings a sense of levity and compassion and understanding and peace around everything we're feeling, because it's just all one thing and we know how it works. So hopefully that does something for you, and if not, hopefully it's at least interesting to look in this direction and get curious about these questions. Thanks so much for your question, Cheryl. And send your questions, if you guys have them, to AskAmy@thelittleschoolbigchange.com, and I'll be back here on Monday answering the next one. Have a great week.